back to the William Hill Sportsbook Inside Silver Sevens with Cofield and Company.
This is awesome. We get to lean on our California guys for a little perspective on the release of the Pac-12 football schedule. Alex Crawford is with us, and former Oregon State football tight end. Howard Croom is on the horn. I'll start with you, Alex. Just the vibe around the Pac-12 football release. You know, California, the West Coast oftentimes gets a kind of a bad rap as sports fans. So was there a little bit of a buzz in and around California and the fact that the schedule's out finally?
Yeah, Cofield, I don't want to say there was a buzz per se, because I think that reputation is deserved at the West Coast football. But you talk to people in Pac-12 circles, people that looked at the schedule, people like, John Wilner, who covers Pac-12 for the San Jose Mercury News. Very favorable schedule. Protected the top teams. Things are looking good. So from that sense, for people that care about Pac-12 football and are looking at it, the schedule was a win.
What do you think, Howard? I would assume people, football fans would just be fired up to see, hey, you know what, there's going to be some normalcy down the road. Maybe we'll have some crowds, but we got a full schedule.
Absolutely, yeah. People are happy to see a full schedule. People are also happy to see StubHub and, the aftermarket ticket places selling tickets. Like, oh, wow, we're actually going to be in the stadium this year. In California, Gavin Newsom looks like he's opening a way for the Dodgers to have fans for opening day. So what does that mean for college football? So we're feeling good about that. But what I'm encouraged about is in 2020, the Pac-12 never had a chance of making a dent on the national radar. We already don't get the respect that I think that we deserve. And then we started late. We only played a couple of games. Oregon ended up coming out of the Pac-12. They didn't even win their division. So because of that, the Pac-12, I think, kind of got hated on in 2020. But what this schedule highlights to me, and I know we're going to talk about it a little bit, is the non-conference games. There's some very, very competitive non-conference games on the schedule, and I think that's going to kind of serve kind of like bowl season to show, hey, here's some of our teams on display against the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, and we're going to show you guys that the Pac-12 means business, and we have that opportunity with the 2021 schedule.
Sticking with Howard, I think it's gigantic the beginning of the season that the Pac-12 shows well, because I'll tell you, nationally, because of the way everything was handled, and I'm not saying the Pac-12 handled it correctly or incorrectly, or the SEC did it right or Big Ten did it right, but because the Pac-12 started so late, scrambled to get going, then a lot of teams couldn't play games. There was a notion out there like, hey, you know what, recruits? You want to play football anywhere but the Pac-12 because everywhere else, football matters. In the Pac-12, it doesn't matter. And that's a hard thing to shake. And the way you shake it is to go out and face non-con opponents and beat them.
Absolutely. And I think that the Pac-12 is set up to do that because in 2020 to the 2021 class, recruiting actually was pretty good. It went well for the Pac-12. USC and Oregon, they were in the top 10 nationally. USC got the number one recruit in the country. So there's already kind of some buzz that USC is getting a lot of kids to stay home. Oregon always gets big recruits. So we kind of got that part taken care of. But now, if you just start week one, and week one it's not the heavy part of the non-conference schedule, but it does start out. You've got Oregon State at Purdue in week one. It's not the most glamorous Big Ten team in Purdue, but they beat number 15 Iowa last year to open the season. They beat Illinois in the second game of the season. So they've got some talent. They're coming with some guys. Stanford is playing Kansas State. They're not a good Big Ten team, but that's still a national stage for Oregon State and Stanford to get the Pac-12 off to a 2-0 non-conference record. And then going into week two, then you've got some really big ones. You got LSU coming out to the Rose Bowl to play against UCLA. That's a major, major game. Anytime you got the SEC coming out west, to challenge a Pac-12 team, they're 2 years off of a national championship. So they've got a ton of fight. They got a ton of talent. And then the real big one, Oregon going to Ohio State. That's going to be a showcase game right there for the Pac-12. And Oregon's been known to do that. They've gone to Auburn early in the season. So going to Ohio State, who just played in the national championship, that is an opportunity for the defending Pac-12 champions to go punch a national powerhouse in the mouth and show that, hey, we mean business out here. And then lastly, for week two, we've got Washington going to Michigan. Michigan underperformed a little bit last year, but we know what their expectations are every year. We know what their recruiting is like. So they've got a ton of talent on that roster. And those are three games right there that the Pac-12 can make a national statement to recruits and to the college football playoff committee.
Alex Crawford is with us. That's the voice of Howard Croom. He played football at Oregon State. These guys are in SoCal. We're going to talk a lot of SoCal from time to time and get the angles on the latest sports news in Southern California. Alex, what are you most excited about with the schedule release and that non-conference slate?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off Howard there. I love how hard this schedule is, or I love these non-conference opponents. I know some people might look at it and say, oh, man, that's a murderer's row. That's a chance for the Pac-12 to fall on a national stage. Yes, it is. It's also a chance for the Pac-12 to shine on a national stage. But this non-conference schedule really gets me excited. From UW at Michigan to SC against San Jose State to Oregon at Ohio State, like everything you said, Howard, I mean, that got me excited.
There's one more that we didn't mention that gets me fired up as well in week 3, and it's a battle of the smart kids. Stanford at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, not a SEC powerhouse, but they're going to recruit. They're down there in the football hotbed in the South. They're going to recruit well. They're always going to get talent. And Stanford, they finished the season kind of strong on the rise last year. David Shaw always has his team ready to play. So who's going to come out victorious in that? That matters, and that's going to pile on to the Pac-12 versus SEC rivalry or record, even though it's not so glamorous. So all across the board, there's a lot of non-conference games and a lot of opportunities for the Pac-12.
And I will tell you, on a lot of the games you mentioned, the national angle on some of those Big Ten teams and then LSU, if those teams freaking smoke the Pac-12 opponent, it's going to look bad, one, that they got beat up badly, but two, Ohio State's breaking in a new quarterback. Harbaugh was down last year. Do they have a quarterback, right? They're a mess. LSU sucked. So I don't know if Ed Orgeron is a one-player coach, with Joe Burrow, but I can tell you, people, if the Pac-12 doesn't win those games or doesn't compete, even worse, the national narrative will be these guys aren't. Well, Ohio State is going to be really good, but these guys aren't even like in their prime form, and they kicked your ass.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
And that's why there's so much pressure. Alex said it best. To be the best, you have to beat the best. And at the flip side of that coin is if you get beat up when these teams, like you said, are breaking in new quarterbacks and Harbaugh's down, man, it's not going to look good. But I think there's something to look. You have to step up your talent. You can't get better by only scheduling, Eastern Washington and God bless them, San Jose State and San Diego State. Those are good teams, but you've got to get a step up in talent so you can eventually, work your way to being on par with the SEC.
We're talking about the Pac-12 football release. We got our experts in Southern California, Alex Crawford, Howard Croom, who played tight end at Oregon State. Stick with us, guys, on the way back. I want to get to some of the crossover games against the Mountain West Conference and then also go into some individual situations like the new coach at Arizona.
Hanging at the William Hill Sportsbook inside Silver Sevens, it's Cofield and Company.
Man, I'm just fired up to talk football, right? Normalcy, we got a little taste of it a couple days ago. Looking ahead, Pac-12 football schedule release. We're talking to Alex Crawford and Howard Croom and what they see in the Pac-12 schedule. We'll kind of get into what's going on in the conference. But last couple of points on the non-con slate. We're in a Mountain West Conference city, so anytime we see the conference get a chance to go up and play the Pac-12, you salivate a bit. It's like, is the Pac-12 back, or is there a chance to take them out in some of these games? And I'm telling you guys, one of the most dangerous games early on, Alex, is going to be San Jose State taking on USC. I watched San Jose State, up close a year ago. Watched them a couple of years ago. UNLV had a lot of trouble competing because of the physicality, and San Jose State's going to have a lot of their defensive front back, and their quarterbacks are back, right? Nick Starkel stayed around. He's a former Arkansas and Texas A&M guy. Not an easy spot coming out of the gates for SC.
I'm going to be honest with you, Cofield, and I don't want your Mountain West fans to jump on me and get mad at me here, but I don't have faith in San Jose State to come out of the gates and challenge USC. I know they've got a lot of talent, and I respect them. Like you said, Starkel, he's a highly touted kid. He comes in with a lot of experience as well, but it's not even about San Jose State. It's about what I expect out of USC. Like I said, they just had a top 10 recruiting class. They got the number 1 recruit in the country, and it's not that those young student athletes are going to make an impact just yet, but the pedigree and the caliber of recruit that they get is just it's so much higher than what you're expected to get from a San Jose State. So I just think talent-wise, USC should outmatch them. I'm looking at a guy like Keaton Slovis. People are thinking Keaton Slovis might be one of the first quarterbacks taken in the draft, in this upcoming draft. He's a highly experienced kid. He's been starting since he's a freshman. their receivers, Drake London, I think he's going to be the best receiver in the Pac-12. They've got a guy named Brew McCoy, who's an absolute beast. He transferred from USC to Texas, back to USC. And they've got other kids who are coming in who are also going to make an impact. So for USC, the question is, how's their offensive line going to hold up? But maybe I'll have to eat my words. I'll have to come on after the game, Cofield. But I'm predicting a big win from USC.
And Howard, you keep mentioning the number one recruit in the country. You're referencing who? Damani Jackson?
No, well, they got Damani Jackson. I should have said his name. Corey Foreman. He's a defensive lineman. He played at Corona Centennial here in Southern California. And in high school, he played with Drake Jackson, who's USC's pass rush specialist. He's their big monster on the D-line. Well, Drake and Corey Foreman were high school teammates. And so now this year they're going to team back up on the D-line at USC. And their plan is obviously to terrorize the Pac-12 like they did the quarterbacks in high school.
And you think Foreman goes right in? He's right in the rotation.
I'm a guy who typically, growing up, I never believed a freshman was going to come and make an impact. I went to Oregon State, and what we would get is we would get more guys that would be like San Jose State, guys that have to develop, that have to redshirt, that have to get some size on them before they're ready to play. But what I've found being around USC, I've been around this team for a long time now, and they get guys who come in looking like grown men, ready to play football, ready to make an impact right now. And so I can tell you that Corey Foreman is not coming in looking to redshirt. He plans to play and make a big impact.
Howard Croom played football at Oregon State. Alex Crawford's with us. We're talking about the Pac-12 football release on Cofield and Company. Back to what Alex said about 3 minutes ago about lose-lose situations. I agree with you. Playing a team like San Jose State is you win, okay, SC, great job, you were supposed to. You lose, oh my God, the sky is falling. And this is a terrible thing to say for someone who covered against the smaller conference in my area. I wouldn't do it. Now, it's convenient because they're the local teams, so there's not if you're at home, it's all good. You don't have to do this massive payout. But to me, it's all risk. And when I look at a program like Arizona, and there's a bigger story here with BYU, but Arizona coming out of the gates, they're trying to set a new standard, get the culture going in the right direction, and they come right out playing BYU and San Diego State back to back. Yikes. Those are not great spots if you're, trying to get rid of the stink from a year ago.
To your point, Cofield, you talked about scheduling the regional non-conference games. So Arizona opens up with BYU. Then they have San Diego State, which is a tough one. But the third game of the season is Northern Arizona. And I bet you Northern Arizona is similar to a San Diego State. They've got a ton of guys, or a San Jose State, a ton of guys who didn't get the Pac-12 offer, or a ton of bounce backs from Power Fives or JUCO guys that are looking for another opportunity. So when you're playing somebody that close to you, that you can get upset like that pretty easily. I've seen it happen to Oregon State, Portland State before. So they've got BYU, San Diego State, Northern Arizona. Then they're at Oregon. They have UCLA. They're at Colorado. They've got a tough schedule. So I expected not big things, but when Kevin Sumlin came from Texas A&M, I expected big things. I'm like, Arizona's on the rise. They're going to be great. It didn't work out. I'm still a little bit optimistic about their talent, but that schedule's not doing them any favors at all.
I'll throw one into your wheelhouse here. We're talking about, different team surprises out there from top to bottom. Howard, you played there. You went to school, Oregon State. Do they have a chance to bounce back and be good and make a bowl game with this schedule? Because they got some interesting road tilts.
They do. I'm a believer in Oregon State. Like you said, I went to school there, so I'm a diehard Beaver fan. But what Jonathan Smith, head coach Jonathan Smith, has been building in Corvallis, he's been doing it the right way. He's been, it's been buy-in on all fronts. He's an Oregon State guy. He loves the program, and just everything he does, he's about, character, doing it the right way. We're not going to be too fast. We're going to develop, let's be patient. And as fans, we have been patient, but this is a year where he's had a couple of years with his guys. Now we got to see some return on this investment. So we talked about it earlier. Oregon State goes to Purdue. That's a big challenge. I think they're ready for it. That's a way, you can kind of make a statement early on. Hey, we don't need an easy game. We don't need a Portland State. We're going to go roll against Purdue. They got Purdue, then they got Hawaii. Hawaii's never an easy game. Then they got the University of Idaho. They've got to go 2-1, if not 3-0, because after that they're going to USC, and then they've got Washington coming to them, which is always tough. So it's not easy. Obviously, there's talent all across the Pac-12, but they've got to get off to a 3-0 or a 2-1 start to hope to get to that 7 wins and get above 500.
I think it's really important that Stanford is a high-level winning program. That really helped carry the Pac-12 a few years ago. And, last 2 years they've gone 8-10. It seems like they've been unsettled at quarterback. But it's not going to be easy, Howard, coming out of the gates here. Kansas State, at USC, at Vandy, UCLA, Oregon, and then at Arizona State on a Friday game. I mean, they could get off to a rough start.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with you about Stanford. When they're strong, it's just another, because they already feel like such a prestigious program. It's such a prestigious school. We know it's hard to get in there. We know that they do stuff the right way. It feels exclusive. When you can pair that with some high level elite football, it just makes because you already respect USC. You're always going to respect USC. You're always going to respect Oregon at this point. Washington has a history of being great, but when you throw Stanford in there, it just really feels like a full conference. But like you said, they're challenging themselves. They're going to Kansas State, then they're at USC, second game of the season. I mean, they're coming out fast. They're coming out hot. We saw them play with some adversity last year, though. If you remember, when kind of at the height of the COVID, Santa Clara County, where they practice and play, they weren't allowed. If they left, they had to stay on the road. So they were kind of like road warriors the last 3 weeks of the season. They practiced at parks in local cities and stayed in hotels just so they could get a football season finished. And they ended up beating our Oregon State Beavers and ending their season above 500. And so they're coming in feeling good about themselves, but they've got questions at quarterback. They lost Davis Mills, who was a huge part of what they did last year. I don't know exactly what they're going to be, but they've got a chance early on to show that, that they're a serious football team.
Awesome job, guys. Glad to do this. Appreciate it. Let's talk soon, okay? Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Cofield.
Those guys are great. Howard Croom, the former tight end at Oregon State, and our podcast pal, Alex Crawford.